We've entered a whole new world again. For much of the past few years, global markets were anchored by essentially a single dominant force. That was coordinated central bank policy, tightening together, pausing together, and eventually easing together. That regime is now breaking down. We're now in a world I would describe as central bank desynchronisation, and I believe that's starting to matter in very real ways, particularly if we look at segments like foreign exchange markets and certainly at the long end of global G7 bond yield curves. The Bank of Japan is moving from decades of ultra easy policy settings, just as the US Federal Reserve debates when and how far it can cut. The European Central Bank is navigating sticky inflation, absolutely alongside weakening growth. And fiscal policy now, to summarise that, is really not a sideshow, it's a central driver of market outcomes. I don't believe this is a theoretical shift in any way, it's showing up in the price action. Long-dated government bonds across the US, the UK, Japan, Australia, parts of Europe, France, a case in point, have been coming under sustained pressure. And bond yields aren't rising, it doesn't seem anyway, because of growth booming, but really more because markets are questioning things like the debt dynamics, issuance levels, inflation tolerance, and all of that in a backdrop of a fiscally constrained world. So I think it's safe to say duration is no longer behaving the way investors expect it to. At the same time, geopolitics, economic statecraft have really moved from background noise to, foreground risks. Trade policy, industrial policy, tariffs, supply chain reshoring are now structural features of the global economy. And with Trump back in the political conversation, tariffs are absolutely no longer a hypothetical discussion. Indeed, they're a real policy lever with implications for things like inflation, growth, and cross-border capital flows. Now, I think this matters because it complicates the job of central bankers. If fiscal policy expansion, defence spending, energy security, we could say things like industrial subsidies, really collide in a backdrop of already elevated debt dynamics, I reckon central banks face a much narrower path. I don't think inflation risks will simply disappear just because growth may slow, and that uncertainty directly feeds into long-end bond markets. Another feature of this environment is hidden stress. Private credit has grown rapidly. We all talk about liquidity mismatches, that's debated a lot. And while global equity markets look pretty resilient on the surface, leadership remains very narrow, and I think it's safe to say certainly crowded in parts of the market. Now, I don't think that means that a crisis is imminent, but I think it does mean traditional diversification assumptions in a multi-asset setting deserve debate and scrutiny. Now, I think we need to talk a bit more about Japan. Japan's long-term yields have crossed levels not seen in decades. We've got yields at the highest levels since 1995. That has global implications because Japanese investors really sit at the centre of global capital markets. When domestic yields rise, home bias increases, and global markets feel the pressure. This is one of the reasons why long bonds globally have been selling off and coming under pressure, not the short rates. So where does this leave investors? I think first of all it reinforces that we're in a regime where policy divergence matters more than things like consensus forecasts. Second, I'd say it suggests that duration can no longer be treated as a passive shock absorber. Thirdly, it raises questions about what truly diversifies multi-asset portfolios in an environment shaped by fiscal dominance, geopolitics, and structural inflation risks, or at least structural inflation volatility. Gold is certainly an example of an asset that many are re-debating, not just as a trade idea, but as a potential shock absorber in a world where bonds don't always play that role of a ballast or diversifier. Now, whether that's the right answer is up for debate, but I think the key thing is the debate itself is very important. So stepping back a bit, I think this is really a whole new world, again, moment for investors. The forces shaping returns over the next few years, I think, will be less about fine-tuning central bank language, forward guidance, and probably more about choices of policy, debt dynamics, geopolitics, and how markets price long-term volatility or long-term uncertainty. So understanding those forces and how they interact is now central to navigating portfolios in 2026 and beyond.